Bitcoin is backed by $20 billion worth of semiconductors and hardware and energy. And then, yo-yo coin number 97 was ginned up in the basement of some dude in some place. Well, the nation was founded by people that were looking for freedom and property rights, and that's why they left Europe. At one point, my family came from Lucerne, Switzerland. They were Palatines, and I think at some point Protestants in Catholic Europe couldn't own a job or own property or have a job, and so they came to America. And then, of course, the opposite is a bunch of Catholics from Northern Europe had to come to America for the opposite reason. So the American dream was always go west, get property, live your life, live happily ever after. And after we all got here to Virginia, if we were Protestant, or to Maryland if we were Catholic, or to Pennsylvania if we were neither, but Quaker. After we got here and it got too crowded, everybody went west again, right? To the Great West, to Wyoming, and they wanted land. And now the world is just full of people, and you can't go west anymore. So, and we can't really all go to outer space because space travel's too expensive. So where we can go is we can go to cyberspace. And what if you want, or if what you want is the American dream, you want property rights and freedom and sovereignty, then you can move your life force, your life savings, your economic energy, your property into cyberspace, where you might have the hope for freedom and sovereignty and truth and a decent life. And that's the American dream.
Burn it all down, the Phoenix will rise. I love it. Michael, next to you. So this is on hard money. Hard money, as you know, was a constant through most of our nation's history. Since the abdication of the gold standard in the 1970s, the dollar has had no hard anchor against inflation. Can Bitcoin help the U.S. return to that era of sound money?
Yes?
Mm-hmm. Okay, good.
I get more?
Yeah.
Well, I think if you think about money as economic energy, and you think about a currency as the fluid through which the energy moves, then if gold was your money, and if the gold supply is expanding at 2% a year, then that means the half-life of the energy in gold, or the half-life of gold money, is about 35 years. When that inflation rate drops to 1% a year, if you could do that, the half-life becomes 7 years. But in fact, the long-term inflation rate of Bitcoin is 0. So the half-life of money in Bitcoin is infinite. It's immortal. It's not twice as good as gold. It's 1,000,000 times better than gold. If you had a family of athletes and every month a bureaucrat showed up and they took a pint of blood from everybody in your family, and then you went out and you ran marathons, you wouldn't do it so well. And if they kept coming every single month, that would be bad. And if they kept coming every week, that would be really bad. In fact, that's what inflation is. We're just sucking the oxygen out of your blood, except inflation is sucking the energy out of the currency. And so we sort of had semi-hard money, but the reason that the gold standard worked was the economy grew 2% a year and gold inflated at 2% a year, and everything kind of stayed constant. If you had really hard money and you grew the money supply 0% a year and the economy grew 2% a year, means everything you want would get 2% cheaper every year of your life, and you could literally save money and wait, and in 10 years you could buy much, much more with the same money. So Bitcoin solves the problem theoretically in the right fashion, and if the civilization starts to adopt it as a primary treasury reserve asset, it's like saying, no, this month you're not going to get to bleed a pint of blood out of me. I'm keeping all my blood. And for anybody who's an athlete, you just consider whether or not you would prefer to be an athlete not getting bled to death, or whether you would allow some politician to keep sucking a pint of your blood out of your body whenever they want. It's just really horrific performance problem.
We've got some super metaphors going here tonight. Thank you. Michael, I'd like to ask you, so Senator Cruz had some comments on Bitcoin and energy. As you know, that is a common criticism, Bitcoin's impact on energy. What do these criticisms get wrong? And specifically criticisms that are based on a sort of proof of stake versus proof of work type model?
Well, I mean, the first principle is that Satoshi's invention of Nakamoto consensus gave us a fair, equitable, ethical mechanism to create a digital commodity. If I wanted to create a block of digital energy, people say, what is Bitcoin backed by? Well, it's actually backed by energy. In fact, an encrypted energy, or a SHA-256 digitized energy. And there's $20 billion worth of Bitcoin miners that are protecting and creating that energy right now. If you replace all the semiconductors and all the energy that's creating the Bitcoin and protecting the network with imaginary validators and imaginary nodes, you get imaginary security on imaginary asset, and from a legal point of view, that becomes a security, which is a problem legally. But from a practical point of view, it's no longer a scarce commodity, it's a plentiful security. You end up with 20,000 copies. So the fundamental premise of Bitcoin is I use energy and semiconductors in order to create something, a block of digital energy, which will last forever, which is immortal, indestructible, which you can move at the speed of light, right? We're digitizing energy. The reason that the energy usage is not a bad thing is because, first of all, it's really digital energy. You're feeding in 0.1% of the civilization's energy to create something which will last forever, which is indestructible, which is not that much when you think about it. 0.1% of energy to create something which could be the basis of the entire financial system of the world, right? But the second reason that it's not really a problem is the 0.1% of the energy is all marginal stranded waste energy that you couldn't really use for any other purpose anyway. It's basically wholesale stranded energy, generally paid for at like 2 cents a kilowatt hour. And if you study energy, you know that the retail rates for industries and people are 10 to 20 cents a kilowatt hour. The entire network is running on a thimble full of energy at the edge of the grid that nobody else wants. And we're recycling that stranded, wasted energy into digital energy, which will last forever, move at the speed of light, and you can build any number of beautiful, elegant things on top of it, right, with no friction. And so, why wouldn't you want to do that? I would add, I think that Terra Luna Collapse is going to be good for the industry. It's going to accelerate good regulation. Not all regulation is bad regulation. If you go to CoinMarketCap, there's 19,500 cryptos out there, and there's massive confusion. And a shakeout in the industry would be advantageous because the average mere mortal doesn't have time to study 19,500 cryptocurrencies. And there is a bona fide large demand for stablecoin that's safe and transparent. And it's been difficult for legitimate institutions like Caitlin's Bank to issue those stable coins because there's been a regulatory deadlock in DC. Like, people know they need to do something, but there was no urgency to do it. And I think now this is front and center at Treasury and in the administration and in Congress. And I expect that whatever kind of clarity was going to come is going to come faster because now there's a reason to accelerate the pace. I think Ken Griffin said this last week, the CEO of Citadel. He said the entire industry deserves clarity. We need to understand what's a security. We need to understand what's a currency. We need to understand what's a commodity. And if the SEC does this or gets together with the CFTC and issues some guidance, tier one firms like his, Citadel, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, they can all start to get involved. And then what we'd like to see is everybody want to play in the industry, big investors bring money into the industry, and then the banks. You might have seen David Solomon was on CNBC a couple of days ago, and they asked him, do you custody Bitcoin or crypto? And he said, no, we can't. Okay, well, there's a little, can you as a bank custody it? Can you not as a bank custody it? When I talk to the CEOs of publicly traded FDIC insured banks, they go, oh, we can't issue stablecoin. There's more clarity. I think the banks will get involved, the investors will get involved, lots of people will get involved, and of course the bad actors and malicious scammers will get squeezed out of the industry because not all these things are alike. They are very different. And the general retail population, they don't have a choice between taking a stable coin from a bank or a stable coin from an organization that, ETFs disclose their holdings every day, right? And how about every week, every month, every year? Right now, 70% of the stable coin in the market, there's no disclosure, even in a year, of precisely what's backing it. So the market wants $1 trillion worth of this stuff. Everybody wants it. I can't get it. And the banks that could provide it aren't allowed to offer it. And so we're kind of in this kind of deadlock. And if it took the Terra Luna blow up in order to unstick that, I mean, it's bad for them, but it will ultimately result in an industry that's more mature and more functional. If the SEC approves a spot ETF, if Treasury or someone gives FDIC banks or any kind of chartered bank, a state chartered bank like Caitlin's Bank, the ability to issue a stable coin, that'll accelerate the industry. I think if the SEC regulates the crypto exchanges as national securities exchanges, that will actually accelerate corporate adoption. I think if they mandate full and fair disclosure for all the unregistered securities that are trading in the crypto industry, like the Lunas and the Terras just melted down, that'll shake out all of the garbage. That will accelerate a flight to quality. And to Ken Griffin's point, there's just a lot of public institutional investors that they won't touch it because it's like you're slimed by association with the garbage. Right? Bitcoin is backed by $20 billion worth of semiconductors and hardware and energy. And then, yo-yo coin number 97 was ginned up in the basement of some dude in some place that is located behind a Tor node. And you just don't even know who that is. Like it or not, people with less knowledge than you have more money than you. And the market is dominated by them. So you want to see more corporate adoption, right? You need the FDIC, the Fed, Treasury, the SEC, CFTC. They all need to move forward. FASB has a big role to play. And the good news here is everything I just named is highly predictable. It will happen. It's just a question of, does it happen in 6 months, 36 months, right? 60 months, right? And you have to decide. This is digital energy, right? This is the ability to project power in cyberspace. And it's the consequence of the US is similar, Do you want to have the most cyber power and the most space power and the most air power and the most nuclear power, or do you not? And how do you do it? You mine it, you own it, and then you build the banking operation, right? What you've got is a bunch of energy. You want to move it at the speed of light. You want to borrow against it. You want to lend against it. You want to transfer it. You want to create more of it. You want to upgrade it with layer 2 and layer 3 applications. And the reason that this is a no-brainer for America is because ultimately it's American companies and American investors and American banks that are in the best position to harness and take advantage of this. One of the important things about Bitcoin is it delivers conservation of energy to cyberspace. And what that means is you can actually instantiate matter and energy in cyberspace. And if you want to create a wall in cyberspace, you need actual energy to create the wall. And so what that means is that the future of cyber security and cyber warfare is going to be about maneuvering energy in cyberspace. And if you don't have it, it's kind of like not having satellites in the GPS system or not having air superiority, right? You will lose control of your airspace. Your country's getting bombed back to the Stone Age. So this is really critical to the domination and the security of America in the next 100 years. And the way you actually benefit from it is just harness it.